God aften, og velkommen til online whisky-smagning med WhiskyHeroes Release 2. Her i lokalet har vi to fra smagpanelet med. Vi har Per med, så herovre. Hej Per. Så har vi Allan med, også fra smagpanelet. Og Kai. Og så har vi Paul Dempsey fra Skotland, eller rettere sagt fra Glasgow. Hello, Paul.
Hi there, Brian. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Excellent, thanks. All the better. I wish I was there with you, but
yeah,
at least the Zoom allows us to travel the world without using all the airlines.
It's much faster on Zoom anyway.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah. Cool. Paul, I'll just switch back to Danish for a few minutes, and then we start.
No problem.
Tak fordi I deltager i aften, og ikke mindst fordi I har købt et smagkit. Jeg håber, I vil nyde de her 8/9 dramme, der sneger sig i 9 med ind. Det håber I kan acceptere og leve med. Men som sagt, det er Whisky Heroes serien her, vi skal igennem i aften. Og så har vi vores seneste skud på stammen fra vores egne aftapninger, Benrinnes. Den er lige kommet hjem her i mandags, og derfor er den også, eller forrige mandag, derfor synes jeg, I skulle have den med ud i jeres smagskit også, sådan at I lige kunne få en smag på den også i hvert fald. Hvis I nu har nogle kommentarer undervejs, nogle spørgsmål undervejs, så meget velkommen til at bruge chatten. Så skal vi nok forsøge at fange det så hurtigt som muligt og svare på det. Og kan jeg ikke svare på det, så er jeg sikker på, at vi kan få Paul til at svare på det i hvert fald. Men lad os komme i gang med at smage på noget whisky. Det er vel det, vi sidder her for, tænker jeg. Paul, are you with us?
I'm here. How are you?
Great.
Just getting the first whiskey poured. So.
Okay. I was just thinking if you could start with telling just with a few lines who you are, what you're doing at Brave New Spirits, and what is the Hero series?
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, first of all, thank you. My name's Paul Dempsey. I'm the sales and marketing director for a company called Brave New Spirits. Now, Brave New Spirits are an independent bottler based in Glasgow. We are now about 4 years old. Company was started by two whiskey enthusiasts who sort of joined forces. Both had been working in the whiskey trade for a number of years. Over the last 4 years, we've managed now to open 2 warehouses. We have a bottling hall, and we release several bottlings, a couple of different ranges. And the WhiskyHeroes is probably our most famous one recently. These are most of us that work at Brave New Spirits are fans of music and comic books and graphic novels and things like that. So these are a selection of whiskies from, in some cases, some very well-known distilleries, but a few new distilleries as well. A couple of single malt, single grain, but always either matured or finished in sherry or bourbon casks. So they are classic flavor profiles. The reason for the hero range is, well, a hero is supposed to be the best of the best, and we think in whiskey, sherry casks and bourbon casks are the classics. It's where everything started. So hopefully that gives us the influence and the incentive to do more. Company's busy. We're building a distillery in Campbelltown now as well, which will be producing spirit by hopefully early next year. But the core part of the business is the independent bottlings, and it's great when you can share some of these with everybody. And of course, the good thing about independent bottling is you're always looking at new things to bring out. So the range is constantly updating. So if you like what you see tonight, hopefully then we'll bring the next batches in the future, and we can do more of these tastings. So
yeah. Lovely. Just a few starting points. How long have you been in the business?
I've been in the business now for more years than I can probably care to recall. I started off in the wine trade a long time ago with a big American winery that sold to supermarkets and things like that. A few years later, when you live in Scotland, you kind of sort of gravitate towards spirits anyway. So after a few years with the wine company and not wanting to move to London, I then started looking for companies based in Scotland that would be interested in taken me on, and I started working with a spirits company who had some whiskey distilleries as clients. So the first distillery I ever worked for and visited was Arran. Probably in about 2002, I went to their distillery, so they would only have been about 6 years old. And then from there, I had various different distilleries on our books. So I worked with Suntory and Bowmore and Auchentoshan. Speyside Distillery was the one I was working at before I joined Brave New Spirits. And before Speyside, I was working for the UK distributor of Bruichladdich for a little while, just before they sold out and before they joined Remy Cointreau. So when they were still an independent, small, just when it was just the four founders, which was a lot of fun. And that was probably the first place I started seeing small batch whiskies and things like that. So by going to an independent bottler, we've taken that to the next, we get to do that a lot more often as well. So
I was just wondering if we should start tasting some whiskey, because I'm getting a bit sore in the throat now. So we have a program of 8 heroes for tonight, and Benrinnes I put in as well. And we start with the secret Speyside, 16 years old. Since it's a secret, we can't release on the website or on the labels on the bottles what it is. But let's try it and see if anyone have a good comment on what it should be. Slunchy.
One of my favorites, this one. This was part of the first series, so.
Som Paul han siger, så de 2 første, vi skal smage på i aften, Secret og Agent Evie, Trapped, det er fra første release, og så går vi så over i anden release efterfølgende. Men er der nogen, der har et bud på, hvad den første her, det kunne være? Hvilket destilleri det er? Så må I gerne fyre nogle kommentarer af i kommentarsporet.
The nose on this is incredible.
Yeah. It's not normal that this distillery release anything in bourbon. Normally this is sherry matured.
Well, this is exactly the fun part of this. Is one of the fun things about independent bottling, because it would be it probably wouldn't be that exciting if independent bottlers just copied what the distilleries were doing. So it's amazing when you get the chance to do something, and you'll see that a lot tonight, I hope, when you can work with a distillery, but you can show a different side to the distillery. We're not trying to compete with the distillery. We want to show what can be achieved. So if it's a distillery that normally only ever does whiskey at 43%, well, we'll do cask strength. If it's somebody that only works in bourbon casks, then we might look at a wine cask finish instead. And this distillery, as Brian said, is probably one of the most famous in the region, in Speyside. It's still family owned, and still very traditional, but renowned for releasing whiskey in sherry casks. And this is different because it's of course, the old way of a lot of the older distilleries used to work by, they would have filling contracts with some of the blenders. So, there would be whiskies that they would bottle themselves, and then there would be whiskies that they'd probably design, they would put them in casks, and those would be sold to blenders. And I think this is where this cask came from, which is why it hasn't been in a sherry cask. I mean, it's 16 years old. And you can see from the color, it's very pale, so it's clearly been a refill bourbon cask. But over the time, it's had lots of time to soften down and get amazing aromas and flavors.
But since you don't see this distillery normal in ex-bourbon casks, I can say that I actually have 2 casks from the distillery as well in bourbon.
Yeah, and I think when distilleries like this were producing casks that they may have known from the start would be used for filling contracts or supplying to blenders or independents, they wouldn't use the same cask they were using for the spirit they were going to mature themselves.
No. When you see that quite often at any distillery in Scotland, by the way, that the casks that gets into circulation for independent bottlers like yourself and my company, they have been selected for independent bottlers, so to speak. They have, of course, they have taken those they want themselves first.
Yeah, but that means we can get smaller parcels. Sometimes just sometimes we can get more than one barrel at a time, but a lot of the time it's smaller parcels. And we can show a different characteristic. Hopefully, we can still see the distillery characteristics themselves, the basic, what the distillery is famous for. But I think it's great that we can show, if the distillery doesn't do, when you taste things like this, you wonder why maybe the distillery is, maybe they could, it's like some of the distilleries that don't even release their own bottlings, but they supply blenders and independents, and some of the whiskies are legendary. Some of the whiskies are amazing, but you wonder, the people that own the distilleries would rather use those for the, maybe to supply their own blends or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's great to be able to try something that you can't find readily. And I love that about this industry. So
yeah, that's one of the fun parts. One of them, at least.
Yeah.
But nobody has guessed it yet. So maybe we should give them a clue more.
Yeah. Okay.
It starts with a Glen.
Yeah. That limits it down. And if you look at the label very closely, you will see what looks like the letter S just behind the sticker. So it could be, it could be Glentalkers or something, but you never know. It is a family-owned distillery. It's a distillery that's been a long time for a while. I think it might be one of the last in Scotland that is still owned by the founding family, which is just unusual, That family only owned one distillery. And it's, super famous. I think they might be the only one in the region that use direct fire on their stills as well. So.
Okay. Nils had just wrote that it's a Glenfarclas. It's a good suggestion anyway. I wouldn't say no, but I can't say yes. Maybe Paul can explain that.
The clues would point to it being that kind of way. If you think, I can't think of many, family-owned distilleries that begin with a Glen. Even the name, the Meadow, I think the name, this particular distillery's, I think if you translate it from Gaelic, or they have a colloquial name where they talk about being the Valley of the Green Grass. So there's lots of green grass on the label if you look. So
yeah. But I would say it's a very good guess.
Yeah.
Then we haven't said too much, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's it's a great distillery to visit as well, because we still have a lot of distilleries in Scotland where you can't do tours, and a lot of them are the ones that typically would supply blenders. I mean, it's really difficult to get into. We might be able to get to see Tormore soon because it's now got new owners, but you never used to be able to get into these places. But you hardly ever saw any distillery bottlings from them either. So this is one of the exceptions where the whiskey industry. There's distillery bottlings from this distillery, probably most whiskey stores in the world, I think. But it's so rare to see them. One is an independent and two in a bourbon cask. So
maybe we should try the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Since we can't say the distillery name anyway, so.
Well, the next one is a distillery we can mention, and we mentioned it on the label, and it's the first of two from this distillery that we're trying tonight. And again, at opposite ends of the scale, because we have this is a whiskey that is probably one of the staples for the blending industry. And they don't release a lot of their own distillery bottlings because of that. It's owned by one of the big producers, one of the big whiskey titans. But it's a distillery whose spirit, I think, works really well for blenders and independents. It's Blair Athol down in Perthshire. We use Ivy as a code word. So we invented a superhero called Agent Ivy. And if you've ever driven to Blair Athol Distillery, you will see that the building itself is covered in ivy plants. I think a lot of the spirit from this distillery goes into blends like Bells and things like that. So most of us have probably tried this, but you rarely see distillery bottlings unless it's from an independent. But as a spirit, it's really versatile. It works with different styles of casks. It's not super identifiable in terms of character. And maybe that versatility is why it's so well regarded as a blending component, but it's great as a single cask. So this is
I just love this distillery notes, basically from this distillery. And this one is still from the first release you released from the Heroes series. Yeah,
this is one of the batch.
Batch ones. We took it with us because we have the third one we're going to try tonight is a cousin or a brother or sister, whatever you call it, to the same distillery. So I just thought that it would be great to compare these two. Yeah,
and the theme of our hero range is bourbon and sherry casks. So here we can see one distillery, similar age spirit, but what happens when you finish one in one and one in another. So I mean, this is finished in a first full bourbon hogshead. It would have been filled originally into probably a refill bourbon hoggy. Most of the time when we do cask finishes, between 8 months and 2 years is normal, depending on the whiskey. 257 bottles produced, 55 ABV. So we try and keep the strength natural if we can. And again, it's just another, we don't want to replicate what the distillery does. So you will see a lot of independent Blair Athol out there, and you rarely see two that are very similar. So it's always worth trying them when you get hold of one. It's a good distillery for independents because it's quite a big distillery. They produce quite a lot of spirit, which still remains accessible for people like us to get hold of casks. And if we want to finish, we want to change the cask and put them in wine casks, etc., etc. But there's great versatility here, and you end up with a whiskey that gives you high quality attention to detail, but it's not so expensive that you can't afford to drink it. So
exactly. Let's try, Paul.
Now, typically, I get lots of sort of honey and maybe a little bit of green apples and things.
Yeah, it's lots of fruit in it, fresh fruits.
I was going to say, and obviously, if anybody's got any questions as we go on with this, please shout them out or put them in the comments, and I'll try and answer as best I can.
Sure.
Because this is, it's great to hear what people think, and especially with some of the whiskies tonight, they've only just arrived in Denmark. We've only just released them in around the world. So you guys are amongst the first to try these. So yeah, whenever we taste Blair Athol, we always get people commenting on the fruit, and it's like sort of orchard fruits, pears, apples.
Yeah, we just got a comment here. Just got a comment here in the track here saying great fruity taste. And I couldn't agree more.
And with bourbon casks, because bourbon typically you'll get, you don't get the spice and the nuttiness you would get from certain sherry casks. What you do get is honey, lemon, vanilla, green grass, freshness, summer. It's a good summer dram. And of course, you get that very light golden color, which is typical of bourbon casks.
Yeah, but the sad thing about that is that the darker the whiskey is, the easier it is to sell normally, especially in some parts of in Europe.
Some parts of the world, So
yeah, and some parts in Europe, it's just the world is the cheaper the better. We don't care about the liquor. We just don't want to pay more than XX euro per bottle. In some other countries, it's the darker the better, and they don't care about the price then. So it's a funny world. It's a funny world, and you can't satisfy everybody.
And there's parts of the world where they combine both. So the whiskey has to be the same color as a grand piano, and you know, but it has to be as cheap as they can get it, and it's bizarre. And I think the whiskey industry, it's funny when you go into a store in the UK, maybe one of the big kind of supermarkets or something, and you see very low cost blended whiskey on the shelves. You know, there's stuff that's everyday whiskey, and it's 40%, and it's clearly not natural color, but people just expect it to be a certain color. And you know that I like a lot of the independent distilleries now, and certainly most of the independent bottlers I can think of. You know, we love leaving things, you know, adding color or cutting the strength to 40%. It's another process that would add time, probably costs more. And we'd rather leave it as natural as possible. You know, the type of people that are drinking these whiskies generally know a little bit more about, or a lot more about, the whiskies and the distilleries. They've maybe been and visited several distilleries when they've visited Scotland. And regarding the ABV, we all know if you think it's a little bit strong, you can dilute it down yourself with a few drops of water. That sometimes changes the structure. But everybody's palate's a little bit different. So we would rather somebody enjoys the whiskey and sets it, you know, uses a drop of water to set it to suit their palate perfectly, rather than us trying to suggest that everybody should have their whiskey the same way. So.
Yeah, exactly. The same procedure when I bottle my own casks for Fadandel's brand here. It's all with natural strengths. We don't color it, and we don't chill filter. So I can just say the same things you've just been through, but basically, if people want it not to be that strong, they can always put a few drops in, and then it's much better for them, maybe. But it's all about favorites and how you'd like to drink your whiskey.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even. I mean, everybody's palate is different, but everybody's palate can change through the day as well. I mean, you drink at lunchtime. Mind you, the amount I drink at lunchtime, sometimes it might change a few things, but a drink at lunchtime could be different from an evening drink. Summer versus winter. If you're drinking your whiskey with food, again, so you have more flexibility, more attention to detail. And of course, with single cask or small batch or high strength releases, you get more whiskey in the bottle, because you know, if it's 60% versus 40%, yeah, the taxman takes a bigger bet, but there's more alcohol in there, so it lets.
Yeah, and we like that.
I can't. I live in Glasgow. I can't comment. You know, we have a certain fondness for that here too, I think. So.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, but maybe we should try the second. Actually, the third one tonight, together with this, just to mash them up, see how is it.
Yeah, so this is the next one is Agent Ivy again, and we called this one Chronicles in Cadiz. So Cadiz is one of the main towns in the little triangle at the south of Spain that makes up the Jerez region, and this is finished in first fill Palo Cortado sherry casks. So this is a small batch. So this is not a single cask. There'll be one or two casks that we've put together. We finished them in Palo Cortado sherry cask. The Palo Cortado is a little bit different. It's not as spicy or as sweet as Oloroso sherry, which is, you know, that Oloroso is probably the sherry type that most people would be familiar with in whiskey. Palo Cortado a little bit different. Again, it's 12 years old. 358 bottles, bottled at 55.9. So the main difference between this and the one before is the cask we used to finish it in. And with sherry casks, you've got a different set of flavors. have less of the vanilla, but typically you will get almonds, nuts, nutmeg, spice, cloves, but that can vary from each different type of sherry. So Amontillado and Palo Cortado, they're a little bit drier than typical Oloroso. And again, this is one of the things that I think you see a lot more independent bottlers now. When you used to just have sherry and bourbon casks, they're now specifying the type of sherry, which is great. It's good fun because there's a huge difference between a Palo Cortado and a PX, for instance. You know, huge different level of sweetness. But
yeah,
this,
the PX is normally much more sweet.
Yeah, and it would be very much darker as well.
Yeah.
But this might be the first tasting I've ever done where we've had both of the Blair Athols side by side. You know, and they're the same age, similar strength, and it's great. Really looking forward to seeing what people think, because it's one of those distilleries. We noticed that when we did it, we've done Blair Athol in sherry and bourbon casks before, but it's a huge difference. But hopefully, you can still pick out good distillery character, but a completely different flavor profile at the end.
Yeah, it's more nutty in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, Palo Cortado is not as spicy, so it's less. There's less. Quite, you know, if you use Oloroso cask, Christmas cake is always a favourite tasting note in the UK when you have an Oloroso cask. But Palo Cortado is a little bit more mineral. You know, it's a little bit less sweet, but the complexity is there. You know, I always think you get a bit more complexity with sherry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's more complex than PX or Oloroso normally is, but and Oloroso is more dry, and sometimes it's like it's just dry out your mouth totally when you have a dark Oloroso dram.
Yeah, and obviously, I think, you know, the sherry producers, I don't think they make as much Palo Cortado or Amontillado or Fino as they do Oloroso. It's, but obviously we you know, you can specify. So when you're buying sherry, when you're buying casks in Spain or in Europe, or if you're going to the cooperage to get hold of casks, you can now, with a lot of them, you can order casks that have been seasoned to your spec. So you can say what type of sherry you would like in the cask. You can say how long you would like that sherry to be in the cask, how long you would like it to interact with the cask before they tip it out and send us the cask to fill with whiskey. And that's part of the fun. You know, it's a really tough day in the office when you have to sit down and decide that the whiskey is aging well enough to bottle. I have to leave my car at home those days.
Yeah, but Paul, I can easily help you with that. Just send us some samples and I'll help you.
Yeah, we never have any shortage of volunteers. And there's always a fight. I mean, I haven't been out to cooperage for a long time, actually, for over a year. But you know, Alex, he was out in Spain a few months ago, and we often have people from various cooperages and whatnot visiting Scotland, and they always ask to come and see us, and it's great. But they bring samples of the wood; they don't bring samples of the wine or the whiskey. So that gives us the incentive to travel a bit more. So.
Yeah, but if they don't bring samples, just show them the door and say, "Come back next week."
No, we do need them to visit because we do need to check everything out. We get a glass of water here, so.
Yeah, and I know Alex. He loved the trip he has to Spain. He talks about it every time I call him. I don't know why.
The thing is, there's so much happening, not just in Spain, but in France, in America, with the various cooperages, and you know, the whiskey industry is experimenting. You know, we have to use oak barrels. I mean, we're concentrating on sherry and bourbon with these whiskies here, but you know, the world, we started realizing maybe 10, 20 years ago that you could use wine casks, you can use spirit casks. I've seen tequila casks now being used by some of the distilleries. because of the way people travel now, we're picking up influences from all over the world. And if ever you see if you're ever touring a cognac distillery and you see the barrels in the warehouse, you wonder what it'd be like to put some whiskey in there. And I think I'm seeing spirits producers in other countries now are asking for old whiskey barrels to do the same with their spirits. So there's tequilas that you can buy nowadays that have been matured in whiskey barrels, ex-Isla whiskey casks, for instance.
Yeah, I think it's about, was it 10 years ago? I bottled a cognac cask, and a cask from Tomatin. And before that, they had swapped casks. So the Tomatin has been matured in the cognac cask, and the cognac was in Tomatin, and Tomatin was in cognac. And it was almost similar.
Yeah.
For blind tasting, I don't think you will you could taste the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that there's a lot more of this kind of experimentation happening now.
Yeah,
we've got more distilleries, and there's a lot of younger distilleries, and of course, the way the industry is, a lot more whiskies are being bottled at a younger age than they used to be. And I think one way to try and show it, Bruichladdich were very good at this when I was working with them years ago, because some of the owners were wine merchants in a previous life, so they had knowledge of where they could source interesting, unusual casks, and they were using things like Sauterne casks and cognac barrels. Whiskey. A lot of whiskies started using port casks about 15 years ago, mainly for finishing, but we're now starting to see whiskies that have been aged for much longer spells, especially the non-Scotch ones that were coming in from people like Cavallan or whatnot. And it just keeps it interesting. That means every time you go to a festival or a whiskey tasting, there's always something that you've not seen before that you should try. So
we just received a comment here. First is delicious, soft, and as said, summery. The other has more body and flower. Very good.
Thank you.
And to be honest, it's the first time tonight I try the new ones here, because I've had a cold for about 2 or 3 weeks now, and using a nose spray for 3-4 times a day now. But actually, I can taste it tonight, so that's lovely.
Excellent. Now, you do know, I mean, whiskey makes a great toddy. I've never made toddy with a single cask, single malt, but if you have a bottle of everyday sipping blended whiskey, I think whiskey probably help a lot better than the nasal spray. So,
so what you're saying is that I should convince my wife that I just should drink more.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a different end of the market. Like a couple of years ago, when we first discovered Zoom, because of this, when the pandemic arrived, we first discovered Zoom and virtual tastings. As Corona was unlocking, I'm not going to say which country I went to, but I went to one of the first whiskey fairs after the lockdown, when people could start going to events again. And it was great to see people after 2 years. But terrible. I came back to the UK, and I was on a virtual tasting the next night, and I went to sniff it was a peated Loch Lomond whiskey, and I couldn't smell it. And then I realised that I'd brought some COVID back, and I'd lost my sense of smell. Every day I had a bottle of peated. I had the same little 5cl sample bottle of the peated Loch Lomond, and that was how I found out I was getting better. Because once I could start to smell it again, I knew I was like, oh, it's come back. Thank you.
Yeah.
So whiskey helps so many ways. So.
Absolutely. Actually, in our medicine cabinet at home, I have new make, about 80%. So when we really get a cold, we take some of that, but it didn't help this time. I don't know why.
I know from my old the distillery I used to work at was Speyside. The last one I worked at before I joined Benrinnes Spirits was Speyside Distillery up near Athol. And the first distillery manager that was there when I joined the company was he'd been at Cragganmore for lots of years before he joined Speyside, and he swore blind that you know, drinking a cup of the wash. If you had a cold, the wash was, you know, a glass of your the beer that they make essentially before they distill it into whiskey. Because it's full of all the enzymes coming from the barley, and he swore blind that was the best thing to fight a cold. And I'm like, great, the next time I feel a cough coming on, I got to go and find the distillery now.
So what you're saying is that I should get some more wash home?
Yeah, just ask, you know, if you know, next time you speak to anybody that's got a distillery or you're doing a distillery tour, ask them to fill a little bottle of it, and you can keep it for health purposes. So, I mean, in essence, it's barley, water, and yeast. It's not very far removed from porridge, which we have for breakfast here. So, you know.
Oh, okay. So you use it for dipping your bread into to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Because it's like cloudy beer. So and it's great for that sort of thing. But hopefully you can see the difference. That this is a great example of the differences between bourbon and sherry cask straight away. Even the colours side by side. So it's great to see what people think. And like I say, it's the first time I think we've had both on the same tasting. So I hadn't actually thought of that when we were putting these together. Is this your own one from?
Yeah, that's the Benrinnes we're going to try next.
Excellent.
Yeah. So now we tried the Blair Athol in the sherry, and I'm not sherry. I was going to say, but it was quite fun to try them against each other and see what the difference is. And I think you should do that more.
Yeah. And it's one of those distilleries where, I mean, we've bottled quite a few Benrinnes, for instance, over the years. And we've bottled a lot of Blair Athol, quite a few WN. So you might see, don't be surprised if you see some of these distilleries turning up on subsequent batches, but with different casks. Because it's a lot of fun to show the differences.
Exactly. Okay, so let's go further to number 4. Myself, my own Benrinnes is 13 years old, and this one is batch 1, means that we are going to bottle a part of the cask again next year as 14 years old, and the next year as 15 years old. And maybe we will start with the next cask as well, because I have a few left in the warehouse. So it's a new way for me to make a bottling, to make a series like this from the same cask. So I'm quite anxious to hear what people are saying about this one, and I think you have tried it as well.
What I will say is that, you know, obviously the law states when you bottle a Scotch whiskey, it has to be bottled in Scotland. When you're bottling each batch, please do feel free to leave a few bottles behind in Scotland for us to research with. So.
Yeah, but actually, this one is bottled in your warehouse.
Oh, okay.
And when we bottled it, or you bottled it in your warehouse, 96 bottles, I told Debbie to keep one for herself, because
she didn't tell us that.
Yeah, but the bottles are bottled on her birthday, so I just thought she needed a bottle. Monday's
going to be interesting. I'll have to have a word with Debbie.
Yeah, but I'll you know what? I'll keep one here, and next time I come over, I'll bring you one.
Super.
Yeah, no worries. So it's quite a shame you can't try it now with us, Paul, but bear with me.
Benrinnes is another one of those underrated distilleries, and it's a difficult one to see. It's a difficult distillery to visit. And they don't do a lot of their own distillery bottling. So again, it's one of these ones where independent bottlers can have a lot of fun and interest with this. So,
but I think I purchased about 4 casks of this one, so we can do some fun about it.
Mm-hmm. It's a good classic old distillery as well, because they had, you know, I think they've upgraded it in the last maybe 10 years or so. But before that, you know, it was one of that, and Craigellachie was another one that people always said had this kind of meaty, or the oiliness, different kind of texture to other distilleries in Speyside, which I think works well with really good active casks. So,
yeah. but it could be quite fun to hear what people are saying out online here at the tasting, what they think about it. So feel free to comment in the blog here, and I would love to see what people think anyway.
It's nice and heavy.
Yeah, it's quite heavy. Yeah. I was just going to ask, what do you think? You people are sitting here, good people at the table.
Soft.
Soft? Yeah.
Dry and fun.
Mm.
Fruity on the nose, I think.
Fruity, yeah, yeah. No. That's my good.
And you used Oloroso cask on this one. This is, so again, we're on to a very classic sherry style, I would expect. So
yeah, actually, the story about these casks are that when it was about 10 years old, all casks in the batch was dropped into a big tank, and then filled into first fill Oloroso octaves for 24 months.
right, okay, wow.
Yeah. And after 24 months in these octaves, it came back into new refill huggies and been there since.
So the octave would have really turbocharged, or you'd hopefully, you know, the ratio of liquid to wood is so strong. We've bottled a few octaves as part of the WhiskyHeroes range, and
okay. Yeah, I saw a special bottling for Germany. I think that was 12 years old.
Yeah, we did I think I remember if that was the Burnside. We did, as this range develops, we want to maybe look at doing exclusive bottlings in certain parts of the world. So we did one in the UK where it was a little octave, and I think we got like 40 bottles out of it. We did it on a Kalila. So it wasn't big enough to sort of show the rest of the world. But this is the kind of thing we want to do more of with this range as it goes on. So, you know, Brian and I will keep discussing, and hopefully, you know, you may well see at some point in the future something we release just for Fadandel as part of the Heroes. I'd love to do that kind of thing with you. So
you're fishing right now, Paul.
You know, when you next visit in Scotland, we can walk around the warehouse and see if any of the bungs accidentally fall out of some casks. So.
Yeah, actually, I think we saw a few of those last time as well. just ask Debbie.
Yeah, yeah. That's her domain. She runs that warehouse brilliantly. So.
Yeah, actually, we just got a few comments here on the Benrinnes. Very soft and dry, great mouthfeel. And another one here, definitely my favorite so far. Thank you very much.
Benrinnes has always got that mouthfeel. I think that's part of the reason it's. I don't know if this is one of the ones, the distilleries that were still using the worm tubs and things like that, but they have this. You know, it was so well known for being such an old style of production. And maybe different to the sort of modern things that are coming out of Speyside region. It's at the other end. So,
yeah, sorry, I was just a bit behind the scenes here because the video man wants to try it as well. Or should we just call him by name, Klaus?
That's me.
But remember, Klaus is working, so you know, can't try too much.
Exactly.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, and we don't work, Paul.
Yeah.
But maybe next time when we're going to bottle the next part from this cask, I should come over and be part of the bottling team, and we could have a few drams.
That would be amazing.
I think it would make sense.
I think that you'll see there's been a lot of changes since you were last over in the warehouse. And of course, we've now got a warehouse in Campbelltown as well. So, you know, you can maybe combine a trip to both sites. So.
Yeah, actually, I think Alex mentioned something about November. Capletown.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's
Um,
Alex. Alex was Alex's birthday last week, so he's in.
Yeah, I know.
Or tomorrow he flies. I think he's going to New York for a vacation with Sandra. Because everybody that he's never been before, so everybody in the office that's ever been there, sort of dropping him restaurants and museums he needs to visit and stuff. So,
okay, so what you're saying is next week is a good time to come to Scotland.
well, you know, I can get a sample. He's got a great radar. He can hear a bottle opening at about 150 meters. So,
Yeah, but yeah, that's Alex. Just another comment here from Oliver. Rich and soft, slightly sweet, really good aftertaste. Thank you for that.
excellent. And and again, another thing with single casks, there is nowhere to hide. So you taste everything, and when you think it's good enough to put in the bottle, it's great to hear people thinking, you know, liking what you've done. So.
Yeah, and also just for information that I'm keeping 2 to 3 boxes of these for the series, so we have them when the full series is home, so we can make a tasting with batch 1, 2, and 3 at least.
That's excellent.
You should come then.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Denmark's not that far away, so.
No, it's only a 1.5 hour in the plane, so.
Yeah, and I think EasyJet still do a direct flight, so you know I won't be that far away. So.
No, you can fly directly from Edinburgh anyway. And I'm quite sure that I could get my son to come and pick you up.
I've not been in Denmark for years, actually. I've got a good friend that lives in Copenhagen. We saw each other maybe 7 or 8 years ago. He married a Danish girl, so. But yeah, it's about time we went back to visit.
You're always welcome here, Paul, and we have a spare room for you. So
Super, thank you.
Well, enough about Benrinnes, I think. Time is running. We used just nearly an hour now, so we have 5 bottles left. So maybe we should keep on trying some whiskies. So the next one we're going to try is the Glendullan, 15 years old, Paul. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, right. We are single cask again. This one is an Amontillado sherry hogshead, first fill. Now we haven't said finished on this one, and you know whenever our labels say finished, that means we've finished it. But, you know, whether this has been 15 years in Amontillado, I'm not sure, but for as long as we've known the cask, it's been in an Amontillado hogshead. 282 bottles, 55.1, and it's the first bottling we've done as Brave New Spirits of Glendullan, which is a distillery. Again, it's a massive distillery, but we don't see a lot of this in Europe. There's a very famous whiskey brand called Singleton, and in Europe you get the Singleton of Dufton Distillery, but in the US, I think in the Americas, you get Singleton of Glendullan, and in Asia, you get Singleton of Glenord. So the Singleton brand attaches to 3 different distilleries. Now, they're not trying to be the same, but we just thought this was really interesting because it's the first, there's a few in this range of Whiskey Heroes where we're bottling distilleries for the first time. And this is one of them. It's called Gathering of the Seven Hills because it's, you know, Dufton is the town built on 7 stills. So we're just playing with words. But again, I'd love to know what people think because this is the first one we've done from this distillery, and if the response is good, then we have got more casks from here that we can play with.
I do believe that, but I think this is very fresh, grassy. Bubblegum in the scent, yeah.
Bubblegum's a good tasting one, actually.
No, we're not tasting. We're just nosing.
We should always put again. We should always remember. We never do, but we should always put a message up at the start of all these tastings. that if we hear a really good flavor note or an aroma note and we borrow it, you can't ask for royalties or something. So
just send some more bottles.
yeah. Well, do you know what? When we started working with Zoom and Teams and all these virtual tastings, a lot of the time, for a lot of us that worked for distilleries, it's probably the first time we saw, we would sell bottles to shops, and the shops would sell bottles to people, but you very rarely saw the people open the bottles and enjoy them. And when we started doing all these virtual tastings, we got to see the people that were buying the bottles actually tasting them for the first time. And they were telling us the tasting notes, they were telling us what they thought. And some of them were fantastic. And I think there's a lot of very worried consultants out there who used to charge companies lots of money to write tasting notes for them. But the people that are enjoying the whiskey are doing a better job. So,
yeah, whiskey is made for drink.
Yeah,
not for keep. It's really really fruity on the taste as well. Sweet.
I mean, it's not a distillery I've ever visited, but I want to, just because this is, when we were tasting all these casks to put this range together, we never have just one person choosing the cask. There's always 5 or 6 of us will taste various different samples, and this is one that I think lots of people thought was good enough. And I haven't seen a lot of Glendullan out there. I think because it's part of the Singleton family of brands, it's more well known because of that. But it's a great one. It was a great one to put in the range. So
yeah. Monsieur Allen?
I think that just a hint of the strawberry bubblegum in the taste as well.
Strawberry and bubblegum. Yeah. In the taste.
Yeah, in the taste.
Yeah.
I was getting strawberries. Fresh strawberry.
So we just need the cream and the sugar then.
I always come away from virtual tastings hungry because of the amount of different foodstuffs that get mentioned over the course of the evening.
Yeah, then you don't want to know what we got to eat tonight.
I'll tell you what, I spent the last 3 days, I don't know if this makes anybody jealous, but I've spent the last 3 days in Norwich in England. I got back last night, and we have a magazine in the UK called Whiskey Magazine. And every year they invite some producers down. So we were judging the World Whiskey Awards, like the first heat. So over the last 3 days, I had about 100 samples. Some were incredible, and they weren't all Scotch. There was Irish, there was Taiwanese, there was, American whiskies and things like that. The only thing is, we don't know what they were. It was all done blind, so we only get told the whiskey, the country of origin, and the strength.
Okay.
A tough job.
So you don't know where to go back to then.
No, but in a couple of months, I think we did the first round, and then they'll bring other people in, and they'll do the next round, So in about 3 or 4 months' time, they'll start to announce the ones that have been given the highest marks over the last few months, and then we might find out. But there was a couple. There was an Irish one I tasted yesterday that it was like, even on the nose, it was like frosted donuts. The strawberry icing that you get on the
Yeah.
And it was like, I've never smelled anything like that on an Irish whiskey before. But there was a mixture. There was about 20 of us in the room. Some of the people were distillers. Some of the people came from an indie bottling background. So I was one of about 3 independent bottlers there. And quite a few were whiskey writers. And it's great to see what different people look for when they do these tastings. But it is, they won't tell us what they are until they announce the results. We've all got little notes made about which ones we want to find out. And which ones we don't want to taste again. But, so.
Yeah, but that's the fun part about tasting. And
absolutely.
actually, there was a new indie bottler. I won't mention his name. He called me up a few weeks ago and asked me if I was interested in having his bottles in my shop, because then he would send me a sample. I said, yeah, sure, send me a sample and let's have a look at it, try it. So when the post guy came, he came with a big box. Not you know, the small boxes you normally get, receipt the samples,
the little 5cl samples.
Yeah. Well, this box was about like that. So it was full bottles he sent me. That was a sample.
Well, feel free to share my address with him.
No. What I'm trying to say here, Paul, is that where's my samples?
Yeah, well, this is why you need to come and visit.
Yeah. It's not the same. It's not the same. But sometimes it can be a tough job at the office to try all the samples coming in. Also for the cask samples, etc. We're trying all the time.
Yeah.
Just say when.
I did say when.
No.
Per, when was it you visited me last time? Tuesday, yeah. We tried about 6 samples for them Tuesday night. Didn't you get the memo?
No. I'm afraid that.
People don't keep around people from the car. Feels a bit peated.
Oliver's just comment here, feels both sweet and light dry, sits well in the mouth and can really chew the aftertaste. Very good. And this was that's an Amontillado cask, yeah.
Yeah. So again, not as spicy. Your Benrinnes was Oloroso, so
yeah.
Amontillado is not one of these. It's not in massive use amongst the whiskey guys, but we're starting to see lots more of it now. So
actually, Amontillado is really great on peat whiskey.
Yeah, I think we might have some of that actually. We're going to try.
Yeah, I bottled a 10-year-old Ardphroaig a couple of years ago on first fill Amontillado. I've been there for 3 years, as far as I remember. That's amazing. Really good. Sweetness to the peat.
Yeah, I wish we could get casks of Ardphroaig regularly. That's a great result in itself. So it's a really hard distillery to get casks so much and so in demand. So
it's really hard to get a good Ardphroaig cask with name for decent price nowadays. But you can always buy a Williamson or even the blended. But you know it's from Ardphroaig. Just don't got the plate.
Well, the thing is, I think when people see the name Williamson, they know that it's still going to be so close. I mean, it's Ardphroaig, so it's, you know, I think I love some of the industry when you see the names for the distilleries where they're using, if they've got teaspooned trade names. But I think Williamson became almost as in demand as Ardphroaig itself as well. So
yeah, they start using that as well. So I called my Bessie Williamson instead, in memory of Bessie Williamson. And 2 months later, 3 months later, I think it was, they came out with their own in memory of Bessie Williamson. I don't know why.
Because they saw you doing it first, right?
Maybe. Good one.
Yeah, this is my favorite so far.
Okay.
Ah, wicked. Thank you.
So the next one is Inchgower.
Yep.
On PX Sherry Barack.
12-year-old Inchgower. An Inchgower is another one of these. It's a blenders. Blenders love Inchgower. Again, it's a really versatile distillery, I think. And this is a single cask, 332 bottles. And it's finished in a first fill Pedro Jimenez barrique. So somebody mentioned PX earlier on tonight. It's the sweetest of the sherries. you know, in Spain, they use Pedro Jimenez in the cooking. You know, they use it as a reduction. I've seen it poured on ice cream and things like that because it's super sweet. Lots and lots and lots of raisins and sultanas. But you know, the amount of PX casks I've seen being used for whiskey finishing is always on the increase, and you know, it's a great one for putting sweeter characteristics into the dram. We've done a few in PX casks now, right from the very start of the company. We were using PX casks on certain whiskies. So please let me know what you think. If we've got any questions, we can jump in. So.
Okay, so I'm just pouring a dram here for Klaus. He looks thirsty again.
It's amazing how thirsty people get around whiskey, isn't it? So.
Yeah, yeah, and you get a lot of friends. Exactly. You're welcome, Kai, on the last trip. That was the last trip. Kai, that's in the room here, Paul. He was with me in Glasgow last time I visited. Sadly, you weren't there in the warehouse that day, but Kai is still talking about it.
That's the downside. I mean, it's great. We love getting visitors, but we do. You know, I travel quite a bit in this, so I was in the office for one day this week. Next week, we've got a couple of expos in Europe, so. Again, sometimes there's people we talk to every week, and they'll be in Scotland when I'm in their country, and vice versa, and we cross paths at airports. It's just the nature of this industry now. I
look forward to see you.
And Kai is just saying that he's looking forward to see you in Scotland.
No, it'd be great. Let me know when you're coming over, and we'll try and make sure that
Kai's passport has expired, so he won't come.
So that's the sort of I've got to go and get my passport's due for renewal. I'm hoping to get it to Christmas. It's running out of pages, so I'm hoping to get it to Christmas. So, and then I've got a few weeks off where I can send it away to get renewed. So. It hasn't expired. Sorry,
Paul, a fellow person in this industry told me in May when I was going to relax a bit on Mallorca with my wife. He said to me, "What is vacation?" He said, "That's where you're going to relax and enjoy, have a few drams." Yeah, but I do that all the time.
Yeah. And I certainly do this. I know Alex does it, and Adam, his partner in the business here, does it too. It doesn't matter where you go on a vacation. If you're in a country that has a drinks industry, where there might be a vineyard or a distillery, you always kind of accidentally end up visiting, you know, the winery, or, you know, I love going to places like, you know, my mum and dad used to have a timeshare place in Madeira. And I think I went out to see them once, and I barely saw them because I was going around the Madeira places, you know, sampling the wines for about 3 days. So.
Yeah, but it's lovely to travel and try some good spirit or wine or whatever you can try when you're out there.
But yeah, so I saw a couple of nice comments coming up on the little speech bubbles there about the aroma, and again, that is classic PX for this one. You can usually smell PX whiskies before you've even brought the glass within kind of a foot of your face, just because it is. We have a cake that you can get in Scotland called Black Bun, which is really compressed sultanas and raisins, and you tend to get it in Scotland at New Year as a gift. Or it's now kind of very old-fashioned, but a lot of the bakers still do them at Christmas, and it's the closest I think you can get to PX on a pastry. So if you're ever in Scotland, go looking for it. It's a very dense, a small slice of it will be really heavy, but it works really well with, I imagine it would work really well as a pairing on this kind of whiskey. So
yeah, well, one is enough. One piece
PX
of
casks are super. They're a lot of fun. We did one of the first releases we did at Brave New Spirits was I think it was a McDuff in a PX cask. I'm about 10 or 11 years old. We've done grain whiskies in PX casks over the years as well. And just because the sherry is so sweet and so syrupy, I think you get a very quick reaction. So as something to finish a whiskey in, if you want to get that sweet and lots of fruit flavors, it's brilliant to play with. So
I would like to ask about the name. If I could, Relic of the Shore. Is that any reference to the distillery or?
Some of these, yeah. Now, I asked Alex about this. This is one of the names that Alex came up with. I came up with some of the others, and Justina, who does our marketing, came up with some of the others. Inchgower, I think, is possibly a coastal or not far from the coast. And it is a kind of old-fashioned distillery, so I'm going to just check. But that might be where the name pinched, where we borrowed a bit of inspiration for the name. So you'll see, like we use ivy when we mention Blair Athol. If we do Dal Ewan, we might mention the badgers and things like that, because of the distillery bottles always having the badger on them. If you see the special releases every year. So, yeah, some of the names don't have any connection at all. But a lot of the time, we always try and put something there that can remind us.
Maybe, Paul, you could release a little bit about your thoughts about your new distillery you're going to open very soon.
Yeah, well, it's not that far away now. Witchburn, and please feel free to check. The website will be getting updated as we get closer and closer to launch. Witchburn is a distillery just north of Campbelltown. It's a conversion of a former US Navy SEALs training camp. So the building was already there. Very industrial looking building, but lots of space inside. And ideal, obviously, Campbelltown is a few kilometers away, the town itself. And a great opportunity to breathe new life into the building as a new distillery for the region. We have last week the washbacks started arriving on site. We've got 16 washbacks coming. So 2 arrived on Friday last week. The stills are now in Campbelltown. The stills were made for us at Friuli in Italy. So at the moment it's like a giant. I don't know if you guys have Meccano in Denmark. There's a thing here called Meccano. It's like Lego or something. It's like a giant kit. Now we have a little bit more construction work on the building to do, and then we can start bolting things together. So hopefully in a few months' time, we can start the production possibilities. It's going to be quite a large distillery, 2.7 million litres a year of spirit. We don't plan to bottle all of that for ourselves, obviously, but we're working on a premise that hopefully we can do 3 different styles of spirit. So we can do peated and unpeated with a medium peated version in the middle. And, it's not, the area isn't set up for a visitor centre because it's still a little bit far out from Campbelltown itself. You couldn't walk there from the town. You would have to find a bus or a taxi or something. But we're working on it like the old distilleries, like things like Benrinnes, where they would have contracts with lots of different blenders and bottlers. So we're hoping that once we have spirit production ongoing, we have stock that we can age ourselves, and we have stock that we can work with blenders and bottlers with, and perhaps trade with. As an independent bottler, if we've got stock to trade with somebody else, we might be able to bring in more interesting casks for ourselves. So
Yeah. Actually, I already agreed with Alex to purchase some of the casks from the first batch.
Oh, right. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But what I was thinking about was, what kind of style are you aiming at?
Well, we want, and I know Alex, Andrew Nairn, who is the head of distilling projects. He's ex-Glenkinchie, ex-Borders Distillery. He's designed and helped a lot of new distilleries start up. And Adam and lots of others. We looked at a lot of older style whiskies, especially the Campbelltown ones, because what we want to try and do is reference a lot of the traditional styles. So the distillery is going to be capable of running distillation at different temperatures. And a lot of that, we think a lot of the reason that people say a lot of the older distilleries, the old whiskies they got from the 50s and 60s were different, is because a lot of the stills were still direct fired back then. So you might have had different temperatures every day you ran the still. It's a lot easier to maintain constants nowadays. But we want to try and produce a couple of different styles. So that's why the washbacks are going to be stainless steel rather than pine, because if we're going to do peated and unpeated, it's a lot easier to change the spirit style. We're not going to get tainting in the washbacks and things like that. So watch this space. It's exciting. I mean, I've been now to Campbelltown, I think 3 or 4 times in the last 2 months. We're all now, it's exciting. It's getting to that stage where when this project was first started and the planning permission came in last year, there was, people would go to Campbelltown for a couple of days and come back. But now I think we've got people on site there every week. There's people going back and forth constantly. And of course, we've got the warehouse in Campbelltown now. So,
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, the warehouse is up and running as far as I know. I think I threw a bunch of casks over there already. So
yeah, we got.
I hope it's open.
I think we got the. We started putting the warehouse together in May or June. I think we got it HMRC approved in July, and we could start putting casks in from there. So that's great. I mean, as an indie bottler, it's brilliant to have as many casks as you can. If you own them, it's great to have them on site or accessible. You'll know yourself, Brian, if you've got casks in warehouses around the country, and we still do, you might want to have a sample, and you send the request in, and it might be several weeks before you receive the sample. So it's great to have a warehouse where we can maybe monitor things a little bit more closely.
Yeah, but are you looking into getting a bottling hall in Campbelltown as well, or is that still only in Glasgow?
I think for the moment, I think it's only going to be Glasgow. The reason being, if we bottle in Campbelltown, it's quite a trek to bring the bottled stock all the way back to Glasgow. But don't rule out anything. I mean, there's a lot of space down there. We've got the bottling hall in Glasgow, which is great for single casks and small batches. It's all done by hand. And for the moment, I think we're quite happy with that. It's great to see the whiskies being bottled, where you are. So
yeah, okay. I'm a bit confused here. There seems to be a few messages throwing over the table here. So could you please enlighten us?
Yeah, sure. I like this one. It's good, but I find it too friendly.
Too friendly.
Too friendly.
Yeah. It's too easy drinking.
Too docile. It doesn't put up a fight of any sort. So.
Oh, okay.
So you want a whiskey that's not friendly at all?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah.
He likes to fight and fall.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I think it's a bit dry, but I love the leather and the fruit. It's very leathery.
Leather's a good tasting though. Leather
okay, so that's Bossword number 2. That's Bossword number 2 tonight. So that's 2 cases now, Paul.
All right. Have we done it? Have you guys got a bingo card or something there that you're ticking off?
I'm just keeping track here. There is something here. Can you tell the number of whiskey for the next one? I'm not sure if we are behind. Okay. The next one is Tamdhu, if that helps, Stefan.
That's number 7.
Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah. And just before that, Oliver wrote here, sweet and soft, delicious tastes. Could be a Christmas whiskey. No offense, really delicious.
Well, that's it. The PX, the raisins, they're definitely a festive nature to it. So
exactly. So the next one is going to be Tamdhu, 17 years old, and that's the oldest whiskey in the range from this release. So fire away, Paul.
Yeah, oldest whiskey we've released as part of the Whiskey Heroes, and the first time, a bit like the Glendullan, the first time we've released anything from Tamdhu. So it's a distillery that's getting a lot of great reports now. It's owned by the Ian MacLeod company, which is the company that the family and the company that just reopened Rosebank. So, you know, it's a distillery that's in very safe hands. You know, they've got Rosebank, Glendullan, and Tamdhu in their family. So it's super people to do, you know, work with a whiskey that's connected to that kind of pedigree. 17 years old, so oldest we've ever done. It's a small batch of 280 bottles, so this is likely just going to be only a few casks.
Paul,
and you will see.
Paul, excuse me. Sorry to interrupt you, but a small batch. Yeah. This number, what would you call a batch with 50 bottles then?
Well, we would say if it was 50 bottles. I mean, there's no legal definition on the word batch. I've seen small batch whiskies and there'll be 10,000 in them because the distillery that puts them out might make, you know, 500,000 bottles a year. But this, we've said small batch because it isn't a single cask. But this is quarter casks. So this was first fill Oloroso. We moved this into Oloroso quarter casks. So sherry butt divided by 4. This is probably only 2 or 3 quarters put together. But like your Benrinnes earlier on, the ratio of liquid to wood here, we hope puts more of this Oloroso flavour, at classic spice, nutmeg, cloves, and very sort of sherry cask into the glass for you. It's bottled at 50.1, 280 bottles released. And we don't have a lot of Tamdhu stock in the warehouse, so it's great to have it in the range. It's a distillery I want to do some more with. Some of the distillery bottlings of Tamdhu I've tasted in the last couple of years have been excellent as well. So
this scent is just lovely, I have to say, Paul. I love it.
It is one of those ones. I think when we were, and I don't have the bottle here, unfortunately, but when we were putting this range together, we're also very conscious, because of the way the market is at the moment around the world, we don't want to put whiskies out that are so expensive people don't want to buy them. So we debated whether we hold on to this, but we don't have a lot of Tamdhu stock, and I wish we had more, because it is, you know, it's great. This range, I think, there's three distilleries in this Whiskey Heroes range. I'm just trying to see what the other ones. So the Glendullan, Inchgower, and the Tamdhu are 3 I think we've never released stock from before, under any of our own names. So
no, and you don't see Tamdhu that often then.
No, and it is quite expensive when you do see. Even the distillery bottles are, you know, because it's not a mass market distillery. It's not one that produces whiskey that you find in 100 countries around the world, you know. So
yeah, just a comment here. Definitely the best one for me tonight so far. Another one, awesome covert. I'm not sure I'm reading that right, but I'm all in for it. So thumbs
that's
up
good
anyway.
to know. So we have to go looking for more Tamdhu, I think. So
Please do. At least count me for a cask then.
yeah, no, I think, and it's nice because obviously when we first started releasing whiskies as Brave New Spirits, and like a lot of indie bottlers, we have more casks from certain distilleries than we do from others. So, you know, it's great to have something there, and people noticed it straight away. Like, oh, you know, Tamdhu is not a one you normally see. So
It's been a long time since I've seen Tamdhu, and as an independent bottler anyway, so that's great to see it.
yeah, I've seen. Last time I was at a whiskey festival a couple of weeks ago. I saw. Is it Druick? They call it the
Druid?
Druick or Druid? Sort of Tamdhu. It's Tamdhu distillery, but it's like you know how you get Whitlaw as a kind of Orkney and things like that. But it's because it's not one that you see on every indie bottler's list. I love that comment. OMG, it's good. It's great to be able to see it, because we want to every now and again just put whiskies out that folk would actually look at, and they haven't seen this whiskies from that distillery before. They haven't seen bottlings from that many. So, you know, I mean, it's great whiskey, but there's lots of Kalila out there. You know, and we've probably released more Kalila than anything else.
I'm not sure. I will tell you the next comment here. Oh my God, it's good.
Yeah, so I saw it flash up on the screen. I was waiting. I was hoping.
Okay.
I can see them. They don't stay on the screen but they just flash up, and it's like, okay, that's great. I'm happy that they're that way and not the other. So, but it's got a little bit of everything. This one, it's got the classic sherry notes. It's got that age. You know, you can tell with my own little tasting notes from the office. There's a sort of roundness. There's a roundness and no harsh edges here. It's had plenty of time to soften down. So,
yeah, but still, Paul, it's quite light. It's not heavy. It's not heavy sherry. It's not dry. It's just really nice and yeah, easy drinking, I would say. I need to promise myself, don't bring a bottle home because it won't come back. And another one here, 10 out of 10, best one yet.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody.
What do you think, Alan?
I think it's very lovely, and I think every time you buy a Tamdhu, you don't go wrong, because Tamdhu is really good, even as cheap. Here in Denmark, you could buy a bottle for $2.50 or $2.99 Danish crowns, and I think even though it's still quite good, I haven't tasted any Tamdhu I wouldn't and couldn't like.
No. Okay.
But this one is very sweet and very minty on the nose, and very soft and round and with a lot of fruits.
But look at the color. I was thinking, okay, this one is more heavy sherried.
Yeah, but it ain't.
But it ain't now.
I think this one might have, because of the quarter cask, it's maybe taken a lot more color out of the smaller barrel. So
it sometimes happens that the color is dark, but don't get that heavy flavor. Yeah, it's not always the same.
Mhm.
And lucky for that, because then wouldn't be fun to be an indie bottle anymore.
No, and this is why I like. You know, I lots of friends that had worked for indie bottlers while I was working for distilleries, and it's great to be able to I don't know. I've been here now for nearly 2.5 years at this company, and it changes all the time. You know, I never thought we'd be releasing things from Tamdhu 2 years ago, and this is why I like the independent bottler culture. Everybody's always looking for something unusual, which is exciting, you know.
Yeah, just find something a bit different than the other guys do to keep up.
Yeah, well, that's it. You said it earlier on there. It would be pretty boring if we all released the same stuff at the same style, the same age. But there's enough of us out there that if you go to a whiskey festival where there's even only a few independent bottlers, there's always new things to try. So.
Yeah, that's a good thing about going to festivals, etc. We have the biggest festival here in Denmark in March next year, and maybe you should come over, Paul, and have a chat with some of the lads coming in.
Send me the dates and we can sort that out. I'd love to get over to Denmark.
1st of March.
Okay, excellent.
So now we have it.
1st of March. Where's the festival?
Denmark Kolding.
I've heard of this one before. So
yeah, and not that we need to arrange anything now, but when you come over, not if but when, please come over the night before, and you can stay here at the guest house, and you can drive with us to the festival and back here, and we can have some nice food afterwards as well.
Yeah, as long as somebody else is driving. And I'll say it's because I'm not used to driving on the other side of the road, but probably because I've sampled too much whiskies by that time. So
yeah, no worries. I'll do the driving that night.
Oh, that's the other nice thing about when you travel for this job. I was in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and it's great. It's like 3 or 4 days, and I didn't have to jump in a car and drive myself. So when we were doing the whiskey festival, it's like, oh, I can have a dram. Oh, there's somebody's got a bottle there that I've never seen before, right? I can try this. It's more difficult to do that at the festivals here because usually we have to drive home afterwards. So
yeah, don't drink and drive in Scotland because that's no go.
Oh, no,
not in Denmark either.
Don't drink and drive anywhere. But it's it's nice when I know that my car's in a completely different country and I can just enjoy all the new whiskies that I haven't seen before. So
yeah, but please come and we'll have a laugh, I think. And Alex would love you come over before him. I know that.
I won't tell him until I've booked the flight, and then he'll get really upset. So no, brilliant.
Maybe that's a good idea.
Well, thank you for the brilliant words on the Tamdhu, everybody. That's great. It shows us that we've done it. You know, we've only done a few of these tastings, and this I think was one of the first where we've done all of the range together. So it's super to hear it. Yeah, for those of you who like your smoky whiskies, we're going that way in a second. So I think so.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we're going to the next one now, which is North British single grain, normally a bit sweet and flowerful, but this one has been done some tricks too, so it's a bit peated. Yeah,
well, we called this one the Blazing Mystery. Blazing maybe because it's smoky, mystery because it's a single grain, and you don't normally get a smoky single grain whiskey. It's from North British Distillery, which is in Edinburgh. And if you look at the label, hopefully this is again some of the artwork that we do. The label, you'll see the clock tower from the Balmoral Hotel on the label, which gives you, again, so you can see that we tried to do the Edinburgh skyline. It's a fairly close representation, which is pretty cool, because the Balmoral Hotel is one of those places that everybody in Scotland knows, but very few folk can afford to stay there. So, although there is a really good whiskey bar if you're ever in Edinburgh, in that hotel. This is 236 bottles and finished in an Isle of Hogshead. So we're back to bourbon casks. But this one is really interesting because grain whiskey, they make it a different way. It's not made in pot stills. So grain distilleries are much more like factories. They produce, whereas a large distillery might produce 7 or 8 million litres of spirit a year. A decent sized grain distillery could produce 100 million litres a year. North British is one of the biggest. Single grain whiskey is designed for feeding to blenders. It's an absolute staple of the industry. They're not pretty distilleries. You don't often get distillery tours because they look like factories. They don't look picturesque at all. And of course, the spirit they produce, because they're using column stills and continuous distillation, you don't tend to get a lot of distillery character. So, but what a lot of people have realized in recent years, if you start using really active casks, you can put flavors and colors into the whiskey very quickly. And we've had great fun working with grain. We've released some very old grain whiskies. We've released some that are using PX casks or wine casks, and we've had a lot of fun. And this is it's brilliant to have a peated single grain as part of the Whiskey Heroes here. So please, I'd love to know your thoughts, because I haven't seen many peated single grain whiskies out there. And the Isle of Hogshead, we don't know. Maybe if we did a lot of check, we might be able to find out which distillery supplied the Isle of Hogshead. But I think when you taste it and you get that iodine and the brine, and you know it's going to be one of the more smoky Isle distilleries.
Yeah, but Paul, since this whiskey has been stored and matured in a huggy, where's the color coming from? Because it's quite dark.
I only have the detail that it's a hoggy. Grain distilleries we source by, again, they usually fill into either fairly run-of-the-mill bourbon casks or refills, or even you buy it in IBC quantities and you put it in the cask from the start. I love the fact it's a little bit dark, but I can't get the sherry notes on this. I'm getting lots of seaweed and brine and iodine. So
I'm not saying I'm getting sherry notes, but it's really dark from ex bourbon huggy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll check on this, but most of the, I think if it had come from an ex-Isle sherry cask, we would have said that. Sometimes when we source these, and again, it's one of these independent bottler things, but sometimes when we source, we go out and we find samples and casks that we want to bottle. The information that you get might not be as thorough as you would like. You might not be able to find out which winery supplied the cask, or whether it was a sherry cask, a bourbon cask, whatever. Sometimes it'll just say Hogshead. But it's certainly got that darker color. You wouldn't see that normally on a single grain. So, or certainly anything that said bourbon, but we just said Hogshead on this one. So, but I love the fact that we did a tasting at the festival I was at recently. We blind tasted this on a few people, and very few people picked out that it was a grain whiskey. I think the cask has put a lot of distillery character into this that wouldn't have been there before.
So Bjarke is writing here that I get licorice root in the North British. And I think Pierre was saying something about it was about
For some reason, I'm getting a sour note.
a sour note, yeah.
Like sour cherries.
Mm.
But only in the nose, but
Not in the palate.
no. And I would never have guessed this to be a grain whiskey.
No.
I think the cask treatment here, so this finish, or the Isla Hogshead has brought a lot of Isla to it, and it surprised a lot of people when we did the tasting in Germany a couple of weeks ago. I think, and it's one of those people walk past when they see grain whiskey on a shelf. A lot of people still walk past it because it's got this, but it's not single malt, you know. But this is a surprise. This I think would catch a lot of people out in the best possible way. So,
yeah, I'm getting a lot of salt in the nose. Yeah, in the nose. Yeah.
I get it in the afternoons.
Oh, okay.
When I taste it, then I get the salt afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, we've bottled a couple of North British over the years. Every single one of them has been a little bit different. So we've bottled from North British, Cameron Bridge, Invergordon as well, across, you know, and yeah, I like that you get the, you know, you can change the structure, the flavors, the aromas very quickly in a green whiskey, I think. So.
Yeah. Do you know which distillery it's coming from? The cask.
At this stage, I don't. We have to say Isla, Paul said, and I didn't know whether I didn't get the information as to whether it was a refill or whether it had been a refill cask. The Isla distillery had used. I think, given the strength of the peatiness, given the high levels, I think we could probably, you know, it's not going to be one of the distilleries that's known for being more delicate. And there's a couple of distilleries that have got their boots on an Isla that are really, really forceful. I'm hoping it's one of those. So
It's quite nice.
Yeah, this is excellent.
Yeah. Pierre
and the other
said-
good thing about grain whiskey is it's not expensive. So
No, that's the fun part, because you get so much more whiskey in a grain than a single malt. It's just cheaper to produce. It's the same cost for bottling, for warehousing, etc. But the cost for producing is just that much lower. So the end product is priced very well, I think.
and quite, I mean, grain, you can get old grain whiskey at prices that you can still afford to drink it. You know, you can get 30, 35, 40-year-old grain whiskies out there, and they're still not, I mean, they're still not so expensive that you're scared to open them. Whereas if it was a 30-year-old single malt, it's a different animal entirely. And a few years ago, we started to see a lot more old grain whiskey being bottled by a lot of indie bottlers. I know people like, you know, some of the more established independent bottlers in Scotland had released some old grains before, and they were fantastic. And you know, you get to taste a whiskey that's had plenty of years to fully mature in a cask. But in recent years, you're starting to see younger grain whiskies now, usually with more active casks being used, like this one, or PX casks or whatever. But you know, you can get a grain whiskey at 12, 13, 15. And if you've used a first fill wine cask, for instance, you get really distinctive flavors in there.
Yeah. Just got a few notes here. I got the smokiness late in the back of the mouth and not so much in the nose. Another one here, new to me. I love it so that I'm used to. Lovely peat whiskey. I enjoyed it a lot. So it's not only me that love it. So that's great. I know Alan. It's not Alan, but Alan is not that fond of grain.
I'm not fond of grain
No.
at all.
So actually, this one is a waste on Alan.
Nah, not a waste, I'd say. Because taste a lot of licorice on the palate. I really can't find the smokiness or the peatiness in the whiskey, but in the nose, I can smell a little bit. And I got a little guess of who's made the cask and who's used the cask before. So I don't
I've
know.
seen a comment just come up on the screen that mentions a couple of distilleries that I thought as well. So, you know, the ones beginning with L.
No, I'm not with that. I'm with Bruichladdich.
You think? Bruichladdich is quite a mellow distillery though, peat wise.
Yeah,
So.
I think it's Bruichladdich whose cask that's been used for this.
That's an interesting one.
Some of the notes from one of the Bruichladichs.
Because I always remember Bruichladdich, not including the Port Charlottes or the Optimors, I always remember the Bruichladdich being a very gentle peat smoke experience in comparison to some of the guys a little bit further around the island.
But for me, there's not that much peatiness in it. So I think it could be a Bruichladdich.
Okay.
Instead of all the others.
So I actually thought this was peatier than I expected it to be from, you know, because with this is only the cask. So, you know, I've tasted whiskies. We've done whiskies before where we've used an ex-Isla cask for a finish, but you're up against a distillery, so you've got distillery characteristics, and you get a very, very faint peatiness. But I think the peatiness is quite heavy on this. So.
Yeah, but I know the brand did an Ardmore earlier on a Ardphroaig cask, and that got a lot more peatiness than this one.
And saltiness.
And saltiness, yeah.
Yeah.
It tasted more like the Ardphroaig. The Ardmore was from Islay, not from Ardmore.
Good. Well, this is the thing. I love the fact that this is dividing opinion, which is, you know, whiskey should get debate going, you know.
Yeah, and taste you can't discuss. Anyway, Dawn is writing here, I love my smokiness, but the Lagavulin, Laphroaig and Ardbeg are quite expensive over here, so I might start drinking grain. I like it.
We might need to go and find more Isla casks because you know,
but just don't expect all grains to be smoky or peated. It's not common. Bjarki's writing here, this is very good grain. I love it. And Oliver, I agree with Alan. I think that might be on the cask where I've been earlier. He agrees with you. I don't know, but that's his comment.
Bruichladdich.
Yeah, Bruichladdich, yeah. Cool. I just noticed, Paul, you're not drinking. Have you stopped drinking tonight, or?
No, I'm still. I didn't have the peated one here, so I'm still drinking the unpeated one.
I will tell Alex.
No, thank you. It's just when there's 8 drams on the tasting, you know, I get worried because 5 or 6 in, I might start to wobble. And
yeah, but
there's 9.
There's 9 here, and I started working at 7 this morning. So please come again.
Well, I don't know. One of the very first Zoom tastings I ever did, when we were still all locked down, and lots of the whiskey guys were all going off to do Zoom tastings. This is a trade secret here, but we often then all linked up after the tastings we'd been doing, and you'd get a lot of different people from different whiskey companies all in the same Zoom tasting, just chatting as friends. But because we'd all been sitting in our house drinking whiskey all night, some of the conversations were interesting. And it won't be the first time. One of the first ones we did, it was somebody's birthday, and they'd obviously had a couple of tastings that night, and they fell asleep on the Zoom call. It was now about 2 a.m. But the green light goes on around your screen on Zoom when you speak or make a noise. And every time they snored, their light went on. And I'm not going to say which person it was, but it was quite a well-known independent bottler. So, and we didn't know how to do mute at this point. So every 5 seconds, you would get a green light.
That's quite fun. Actually, we're on to number 9 now here. The Ardmore on Ardphroaig.
Yeah, it's funny because that's exactly what Alan just mentioned about 2 minutes ago. You said an Ardmore in a Laphroaig cask.
Yeah, it's quite fun because I did a bottling like this, like Alan told. And I held a tasting in London where that bottle was including, and there was sitting 2 lads in the back of the room with the arm crossed like this when we came to that. 2 young guys just staring at me. And when we came around with the glass, with the drams in, they just refused to take one. I said, okay, have I said something? Have I done anything wrong? No, we just don't like Ardmore in a Laphroaig cask. Okay, have you tried it? No. But we had a chat about it, and at some point they took it anyway. Oh, my glass is empty, by the way. It's the cameraman who took it. But in the end of the evening, they told me where they were coming from. They were coming from a family-owned distillery at Islay because they just want to see what is Ardmore doing in their casks. So that was quite fun.
They came from a family-owned distillery.
Laphroaig. They were coming from Laphroaig. They were sent by Laphroaig to the tasting to see what is Brian doing, because Ardmore in one of their former casks, that was just ridiculous. But they tried it and they actually bought a bottle with them home, so it couldn't that bad.
Oh, that's all right. This is, and I think the name here of the bottle, this is 490 bottles of this one, small batch, 10-year-old Ardmore, finished in Laphroaig barrels. I think it's easy to see where we got the name for this one. We didn't go into the history books. We didn't try and find local monuments or names for people that were famous connected to the distillery. It's Ardmore, it's a Laphroaig barrel, and we might have had a few samples by the time we got to this one in tastings at work. So it became Ardphroaig. And of course, we've heard people calling Laphroaig leapfrog before, so maybe that's where the frog on the label starts to come. And this is the fun. This is the thing. And I don't know, we've got a really good designer for the labels, but he must think we're crazy, because somebody would have had to send. I think Alex probably sent the message to the design guy and said, right, okay, this one we need to have, a frog with wings, and
he got it.
Big claws, and they must just. I know a few graphic designers, and they're creative people anyway. But some of the things we must ask people to do, they must shake their heads in wonder. So.
Yeah, but now they know Alex and you, so no, not anymore.
They probably understand us better if they have a few drams before the work requests come in. Yeah, and it was only after we'd done the Ardphroaig thing, we're like, oh, maybe people might think it's Ardbeg or even any of the other studies begin with Ard. There's several in Scotland now, so we had to make sure that we said Ardmore. And of course, Ardmore is a Highland. It's a peated whiskey Highland, but the kind of normal Ardmore peat is different from Islay peat. So hopefully here, and you maybe notice this on your own bottling, you get that Highland. It's interesting to see a typically Highland peated spirit, but with the Islay, we bring some of that Islay cask stuff into there. So, and Ardmore is always, obviously, it's one of those distilleries that, there's a lot of new people getting into whiskey, and I think they think that all the peated whiskey has to come from the islands, because most of the whiskey from, you know, the mainland now, you don't see as much peated whiskey. But Ardmore, you know, Ardmore's always been one to show people that, you know, you don't have to go to the Hebrides to get a good peated whiskey. So,
yeah, Kai, what do you say?
I think the illustration of the label is a bird coming and going. If you smell, if you taste the smell, but it disappears very quickly. What about your opinion? But just
so what you mean is that it's there, but it's quite fast gone again.
Like a bird catching a fish and then disappear. It's related to the bird or the dragon you have. It's coming and then going very quickly. You taste it and then it comes.
I don't know, actually. I don't know how fast the Ardphroaig mutant can fly. So
you taste it, but it disappears. It's there, but it's not so strong anymore. The first you taste it.
I think it's quite good.
It's good.
Yeah.
I think the combination of the two different styles of peat work really well here, because you get the salt, the seaside.
There's lots of salt in it.
Yeah, and it works well with Ardmore. Ardmore's a distillery we've bottled a few Ardmore casks over the years. We've always been, you know, it works really well. This is the first time we've used a peated cask on an Ardmore spirit, though. So
I think the spiciness of the Ardmore is very complementing the peatiness from the Ardphroaig cask. It goes very well hand in hand.
And Oliver just wrote here, wow, love it. Good taste, good aftertaste.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for the comments. It's super to see.
Yeah, and again, a hint of licorice.
And just a bit of licorice in the end, yeah.
And it's quite an underrated distillery, you know. Their unpeated is interested as well. We need to maybe look at one of those for a future one, you know, get the Ard layer as well. So
yeah, please do. I can't remember when I tasted a non-peated Ardmore last.
But that's it. And I mean, most people, again, you know, when distilleries in the old days, most distilleries would have probably been producing peated whiskey because they were, you know, go back in history, the distilleries were all using local sources, so they would have been doing their own floor maltings and probably firing their ovens with peat. But the type of peat you get in the Highlands is different from the peat you get on the islands. It's a, you know, compressed plant matter rather than compressed seaweed. So you would expect less iodine, less salt, less brine. But it's interesting to combine the two.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Well, Paul, that was the last run for tonight, at least on the online tasting here. I'm not sure what we're going to do afterwards, or you're going to do, but hopefully you all enjoyed. And thanks again for purchasing a kit for the tasting tonight, and for participating to the online tasting as well. Also to you, Paul, of course.
Yeah,
lovely to see you again. And hopefully we're going to do a lot more of these tastings in the future.
I hope so. They're a lot of fun. I get to see the reactions of people as they taste them, and I really like that. Thank you, everybody that's been on this tasting and the last tasting. If somebody has done the both, even, you know, thank you. And yeah, as you mentioned colding earlier on, I hope I can maybe get out and we can share a dram in person in the new year.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just a few comments coming in here. Crazy good whiskey tasting, very good whiskey tonight. This was great. Thank you, from another one here. So keep it coming, the good whiskies, Paul, and I'm quite sure that we can get some people around some drams here as well. And at least please note the 1st of March next year, Paul. It'd be great to have you here and have some more whiskies at the festival.
Yeah.
And see some of the clients there. That'll be quite fun, I think.
No. Thank you. And again, yeah, it's great. The good thing about indie bottling is we're changing the whiskies all the time. So there's lots of excuses to come out and see you or get another tasting. If anybody's got any questions or you guys are coming to Scotland at any point, send us a message or let Brian know. Because if we're in the office, we might be able to show you around or whatever. So thank you very much.
Maybe we should make some tours to Scotland. I don't know. Yeah, and lots more comments coming in here. I can't follow up on that, all of that. Thank you for the very entertaining evening and good company. Thank you for tonight. Fantastic whiskies. Thank you for a great tasting. I am going to put a couple of bottles in the basket tonight. I love you, Bjarke.
Thank you very much.
I'm in. Also a new comment here. So it's just lovely. It's great to see that people are loving it. I hope the people here around the table, at least, also they're notching everybody, and even the cameraman is waving to me saying it was good night. So
yeah, and thank you for supporting independent businesses, independent bottlers. Again, it'd be a very uninteresting world if everybody only ever went to the supermarket. So we can only do this because folk like you support us. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. We independent bottlers need the good comments, of course, but also the people are still keeping buying our bottles, because otherwise we won't be here tomorrow. So
yeah, no, I completely agree.
Great.
So
yeah. Okay, I think we'll say over and out for tonight, and we will have a chat at least on Monday, Paul, I think, to catch up and see what's going. Yeah, and
hopefully by the time we do one of these virtuals again, I'll have a different house, so I can have my whiskey library behind me again. So thank you very much.
Yeah, but still we can see your guitar.
Yeah, well, I've only got the one because the others are all hiding because I've packed them away, but that's yeah, I'm a good collector. I'm a terrible guitarist, but I'm a good collector. So
thank you for tonight. Tak for i aften. Tak for jeres deltagelse alle sammen. Jeg håber I har hygget jer. Om ikke andet, så have en god weekend.